Destination Medicine is a joint project of the regional training hubs. This podcast series brings you medical students' accounts of their experiences in applying to study medicine.
Welcome to Destination Medicine. I'm Nicole Goodman. It would be fair to say that Anna Leckie took a somewhat unconventional pathway into medicine. Currently, she's a fourth-year postgraduate medical student based in Orange at the University of Sydney's School of Rural Health. But Anna's lifelong love has also been music, jazz saxophone to be more precise, and that's where her undergraduate studies took her. But Anna also wanted to do medicine for as long as she can remember. So with her music degree behind her, she headed straight into medicine, and she hasn't looked back. There are no what-if quandaries about leaving music behind, and in fact, she says her jazz hobby and playing gigs in a band have actually helped prepare her for her medical studies now. And despite her very non-scientific early years, she's definitely risen to the challenge. Anna is particularly enjoying her clinical placements as she undertakes her final 2 years of medicine at the School of Rural Health in Orange, and she says she's experiencing the best of both worlds. She grew up in Bathurst, just a 30-minute drive away, and leapt at the chance to return to the Central West to study. But now, of course, COVID-19 is with us. What has this meant for her studies? We'll find out more about that later in the interview. First, when did Anna Leckie decide to become a doctor, and why? Anna's talking with Heather Dawson.
I actually always wanted to study medicine as long as I can remember. Even as a kid, I always wanted to be a paediatrician. Very niche for a 10-year-old, but I just always thought it would be nice to help sick kids. And I grew up in Bathurst, so I've always seen how important the role of doctors in regional centres are. And, you know, that a local GP often has to be the anaesthetist, obstetrician, psychiatrist for the town. And seeing people around me have to travel to cities, to Sydney, to receive care away from home, often at great expense or away from their families, really inspired me that, yeah, this is an area I'd really like to go into. I still see the GP who delivered me around the town, and I really like that aspect of continuity of care.
You grew up in Bathurst, as you just said. Did you tell your friends or teachers about your ambition to study medicine?
Yeah, well, I remember when I was about 13, I went to the dentist and she asked me what I wanted to do when I finished school, and I said, I'm thinking about medicine. So she actually gave me a job in the dental practice as a dental assistant to try and tempt me to be a dentist instead. And my family have always been very supportive of whatever I've wanted to do. And teachers have always been the same. When I was actually doing my application for medical school, a couple of my high school teachers acted as referees. So I've always had a lot of support behind me. In high school, I didn't receive a whole lot of information about opportunities to study in Sydney or to study medicine. Most of the information we received was about studying at TAFE or at the local university. And it was actually when I graduated high school, quite uncommon to move to Sydney to study. But there certainly weren't barriers, and family, friends, teachers were all very supportive.
Now, Anna, you completed a music degree, jazz saxophone, I understand, before you studied medicine. So what made you change your mind about making music your career and turning to medicine instead?
Yeah, I get that a fair bit. And music has always been a passion of mine. I started playing, as many do, the recorder at a very young age. And I'd been playing all throughout high school. And I started to think, you know what, I'd really like to just give music a really good go, focus on it for a few years, get a bit of life experience under my belt before looking at medical school. And I sort of decided during my music degree that while I love playing the saxophone and getting out there and playing in bands, I sort of wanted to keep it as a hobby and a creative outlet, something that wasn't going to be stressful and something I was going to try and turn into my career. And the whole time in the back of my mind, I was still thinking about medicine. And so that's how I came back around to it again in the end.
Well, you're studying postgraduate medicine. Did you apply to do undergraduate medicine?
No, I didn't apply for the undergrad degree. Like I said, I sort of thought I'd like to get a bit of life experience under my belt. I'd actually received early acceptance into a one-year music program in South Australia in Year 12, so I knew that that's where I was heading, at least for 1 year. And I sort of thought, no, I'll just spend a couple of years now so that down the track I'm not thinking, what if, wondering about music. And I think that was the right choice. It's sort of funny the way that music actually lends itself to studying medicine. And I know quite a few colleagues in my course who are also musicians, and of course there's the doctor's orchestra and lots of doctors who play instruments. And in a funny way, I think having a background in music actually prepares you to be a doctor. You, especially in jazz, you front up to gigs and you have to perform with a group of people that you may have never met before, people of all ages from different backgrounds, and you have to be able to communicate with them and work as a team to create a product. And I think I've actually found that a lot in medicine as well.
Well, tell us about GAMSAT. What can you tell us about this exam and how you prepared for it?
So I found it quite difficult, as you can imagine, coming from a non-science background. So I started really preparing for GAMSAT during my second to last year of undergrad degree, because I hadn't actually done science courses for my HSC. I did a couple of bridging courses. So I did a bridging course in chemistry and in physics. And I also had the help of a tutor who was a science teacher, and we would just run through as many practice questions as I could get my hands on, just to get a feel for what the actual test would be like.
Can you remember what your interview was like? Did you prepare for it?
Yeah, so the interview so I'm at University of Sydney, so the interview's set up with multiple stations. And this was really good because if you were feeling, particularly nervous in your first station or said something silly, you could just brush it off and start fresh in the next station. So similarly with the practice questions for the GAMSAT, I would just sort of run through practice examples, just have chats with family and friends, go through various ethical scenarios that might come up. And I found actually just having these conversations just helped me to sort of clarify my own thoughts and get them out in the interview because I'd done some practice at home.
Well, Anna, you're now studying Year 4 of your medicine programme in Orange, in New South Wales, and last year you spent Year 3 in Dubbo. Has your clinical experience been different to your previous metropolitan placements, and if so, in what ways?
Absolutely. I think as a medical student in a regional hospital, you get a lot more hands-on experience than you might get in the city. So you're not standing in a line of 6 to 8 medical students waiting to examine a patient or take some bloods. You're actually often the only student with the team. And I found that this really allows for more mentorship from the doctors. So you often actually get to know the consultants and the registrars, and they tend to take on a mentor role and really teach you during your term, which you may not get in a big tertiary hospital where you're just another face in the crowd. So it's been really fantastic being out at the rural school. I've had a lot of opportunities to assist in procedures or surgeries or get to examine patients and speak to patients where otherwise I just may not have had the chance. And that's been really wonderful for me because for me that's the way I learn best, is from jumping in and giving it a go. And so I think it's been a fantastic opportunity. Also I think the medicine that you see out here is a bit different. So because you're outside of Sydney, so particularly Dubbo last year, Orange this year, because it's a bit harder for people to physically actually get to the hospital or maybe to see their GP or access care, you get people presenting at like a later stage of disease or more severe, and that is definitely fascinating to see. Well,
Anna, we can't avoid some mention of COVID-19. As a medical student, has that had an impact on you in relation to your studies?
It's been a very bizarre situation. Walking around the hospital now, it's extremely quiet. The corridors are all empty and, usually they're teeming with people. So it's felt a bit bizarre. It sort of felt like the calm before the storm to a degree. And personally, I've been very lucky that I've been able to continue with my placement on paediatrics. As you might have heard, children seem to be less susceptible. So I have been able to continue my placement and keep learning, and something that's really struck me through all of this is just seeing the way that everyone in the hospital has responded to this crisis with such flexibility. Everyone's just really taken it in their stride. They're doing different rosters, longer shifts. Consultants are switching to telehealth clinics. So it's all still happening and moving, and it's been fairly inspiring to see how people have coped with it. And certainly it's been quite different as a medical student. There's been a few less patients in the hospital, but the registrars and consultants have really stepped in and have been giving us lots of teaching.
Final question. Has COVID changed your attitude about how you feel about becoming a doctor?
No, I don't think it's changed my attitude. If anything, it's just sort of reaffirmed that, yep, I'm on the right pathway. I'm really enjoying what I'm doing and excited for the future. I think the graduating class of medical students this year will be some of the most hand hygiene aware around, and that's not a bad thing. So no, it can only be up from here, I think.
Anna Leckie, fourth-year postgraduate medical student based at the University of Sydney's School of Rural Health in Orange. We trust you've enjoyed this episode of Destination Medicine, a joint project of the regional training hubs. The hubs are supported by funding from the Australian Government under the Rural Health Multidisciplinary Training Program.